Hi, everyone. Welcome to the San Diego Region Air Quality Conformity Working Group. It's been a while since we convened, so thank you for coming. I'm going to pull up, hold on, and read the participants list of who is here. If I miss you, please let me know, and I apologize in advance if I mispronounce your name. I will begin with the SANDAG participants. I'm Kirsten Yucatel. With us also is Keith Greer, Lauren Lee, Sam Stanford, Richard Radcliffe, and Suzanne Martinez, as well as, Ing, I don't know how to pronounce your last name. Ing from our modeling group, so apologies, I'll have to learn that for next time. Also with us, Abhijit Baji, Emma Mjanakalda, I apologize if I mispronounced that, Erica Espinosa Araiza, John Kelly, Madeline Shute, Roger Sanchez, Rusty Wisman, Sandy Vasquez, and I believe, let me see if there is anyone, Erica Vaca, and have I missed anyone? I don't see everyone's affiliations on my list, so I apologize for not specifying those. Okay, hearing none, we will move on to public comments or member comments. We are not a Brown Act body, but we do welcome the public. So, I see that I have missed one other person from SANDAG. Ariana Zerneden is also with us. So I'll just pause for a minute in case there's anyone from the public who would like to share a comment. Okay, hearing none, I will start with the first announcement. At our last meeting, I shared that we were revamping the SANDAG website, and that would result in some changes to this group's webpage that had existed on the old website. And I had anticipated those would be resolved pretty quickly, but we are still working through some of them. So I apologize that we don't yet have the same web interface that we did before. We anticipate this will be resolved in the next couple of weeks, and I will email this group to let them know when that has been resolved so that you can again access agenda, supporting materials, the Zoom link, and past meeting recordings on the website. That is going to be housed on the air quality planning page on the new SANDAG website, but I will send all that information once we have it. And again, apologies, I know some of you have reached out to me looking for those resources. So we are aware of it and we are working to get them back to where they were, and it should be resolved pretty soon. If you have any questions about that in the meantime, or as that is implemented, you have any questions about the functionality or suggestions, please let me know. Please reach out to me and we can try and accommodate those. I believe Richard has an announcement.
Yep. Yeah, thanks, Kirsten. Good morning, everyone. I just wanted to give a brief update on what's going on with the 2023 RTIP. So the 2023 RTIP was approved by the SANDAG board September 23rd, 2022, and then we received federal approval on the 2023 RTIP on December 16th of 2022. Then in January of this year, we received federal approval of the First Amendment, Amendment number 1 to the 2023 RTIP. And we currently have a formal amendment and an administrative modification open. The administrative modification is a pretty typical one. It's just basically our local agencies making some minor funding changes. And then the formal amendment is for our San Diego Regional Transit Capital Improvement Program, or CIP. And we'll be distributing the project list to the CWG once we have released the draft of the Transit CIP amendment for public comment. And that will probably be in the next few weeks sometime. And yeah, that does it for my updates. I guess I'll hand it back to you, Kristen.
Perfect. Before I ask if there are any other announcements, we have had some more people join us. Jacqueline Kars, Karishma Becca, Kevin Hendron, Maurice Eaton, and my list just moved. So now maybe there's someone else that I need to see here. I think that those are, and Michael Morris, I believe. Is there anyone else? So I think that is all of our attendees at the moment. Are there any other announcements? This is gonna be a very speedy meeting. Okay. Okay, well, Lauren, will you go to the next slide? The next item on our agenda are the meeting minutes. I apologize that I had to compile the attendees list for the minutes that were attached to the agenda and the supporting materials from the recording of the meeting. So if you see that you are missing from it, we didn't have the screenshot from Zoom, so please reach out to me so that I can correct them. Otherwise, the minutes are attached, and if you notice anything missing beyond attendance, please let me know that as well. Next slide, please. The next item on our agenda, actually, Lauren, will you go back one slide? I'm sorry. So on our agenda is the final set of conformity criteria for consultation for the 2021 Regional Plan Amendment. I will also review some of the criteria we brought before, just so that everyone has the full picture, since it has been a while since we convened. And then opening consultation for the 2025 Regional Plan. Okay, next slide, please. Thank you, Lauren. Next slide, please. So these are the conformity criteria that will be discussed today. We're going to be slightly out of order due to a conflict from Ing. So we'll start with the schedule and then move to the ABM model and then go back through the conformity criteria as they were on the agenda. Next slide, please. So this is just to remind everyone that our board directed us to prepare an amendment to the 2021 Regional Plan that is limited in focus to removing the road usage charge. There are no other changes that were directed, and in fact, it is intended to be kept as limited as possible. The modeling and environmental analysis for this began in 2022, and we anticipate releasing the draft plan amendment in the spring of this year, and then the board will consider it in the late summer. And you have seen this schedule last time, so it hopefully looks familiar. Lauren, will you skip, I believe it's to slide 12 for Ing, so that we can cover the ABM first, and then we'll go back. Perfect. Okay, Ing, all you.
Good morning, everyone. Yeah, I'd like to briefly introduce the ABM 2+ for the SEIR air quality conformity. So SANDAG used the updated second generation activity-based model system, ABM 2+, for the development of the 2021 regional plan. And after the 2021 regional plan was adopted in December, modeling staff made additional model improvements and input changes. Two changes. The first one is a cross-border model software bug fix, and then the other is corrections of employment allocation in the Series 14 regional growth forecast. So total employment and population at regional and the jurisdiction level stay the same, with small variations at the micro zone called MGIAs. Employment and population are inputs to ABM. So for the amendment of the 2021 regional plan and supplemental EIR air quality conformity analysis, we used the updated ABM 2+ that I mentioned with these two changes. Next, I wanted to kind of briefly talk about what is an ABM and then some of the features we have. So an ABM simulates individual and household transportation decisions that compose their daily travel itinerary. People travel outside their home for activities such as work, school, shopping, healthcare, and recreation. And the ABM attempts to predict whether, where, when, and how this travel occurs. The SANDAG ABM includes a number of methodological strengths. It predicts the travel decisions of San Diego regions at a detailed level, taking into consideration the way people schedule their day, their behavior patterns, and the need to coordinate with other household members. When simulating a person's travel patterns, the ABM takes into consideration a multitude of personal and household attributes such as age, income, gender and employment status, and household size, number of workers. The model's fine temporal and spatial resolution ensures that it is able to capture the subtle aspects of travel behavior. The SANDAG ABM strives to be as behaviorally realistic as possible and is based on empirical data collected by SANDAG, Caltrans, and the federal government. The model development has been regularly peer-reviewed by the ABM Technical Advisory Committee, a panel of national experts in the travel demand forecasting field. So to support the 2021 Regional Plan Amendment, SANDAG enhanced the ABM2+ functionality for applications to the 5 Big Move planning effort. These enhancements include functions to address new trends in teleworking, use of micro-mobility modes, and transition network company, TNCs, and new mobility options for flexible fleets and micro-transit within mobility hubs. Next, I wanted to cover the travel markets. ABM accounts for a variety of different weekday travel markets in the region, including San Diego region residents travel by Mexican residents and other travelers crossing San Diego County's borders, visitor travel, air passengers at both the San Diego International Airport and the cross-border express CBX bridge to the Tijuana International Airport. And then commercial vehicle travel, heavy truck travel. Many of the models used to represent demands are simulation-based models, such as activity-based or tool-based approach, while others use aggregate 3 or 4-step representation of travel. So the San Diego residence travel model is an ABM. In which all tools and activities are scheduled into available time windows across the entire day. The approach recognizes that a person can be in only one place at one time, and their entire day is accounted for in the model. A tool-based treatment is used for other special travel markets, such as Mexican resident cross-border travel, visitor travel, air passenger travel, and commercial vehicle travel. Tool-based models do not attempt to model all travel throughout the day for each person. Rather, once tools are generated, they are modeled independent of each other. A tool-based model does not attempt to schedule all travel into available time windows. Aggregate models relied upon probability accumulation process to produce travel demand and output trip tables. The external heavy-duty truck model and certain external travel models are aggregate models. So for people interested in more details of the SANDAG ABM2+, please refer to the Appendix S of the 2021 Regional Plan Report. It covers SANDAG travel model in greater details. There's also off-model calculators that used to address programs or policies that couldn't be modeled on model. So we have those off-model post-processing to address SB 375, GHG, and VMT reductions. After ABM runs for the air quality years are completed, we use post-processing to generate MFAC 2017 input files based upon the daily VMT by vehicle and fuel type and hourly fraction of VMT by vehicle and fuel type by speed bin based upon the ABM traffic assignment results at the link level. We then run MFAC 2017 to generate emission outputs for annual summer and winter seasons. With that kind of concludes my presentation. Not sure if there's any questions.
Okay, well, hearing none, I know Ing has a conflict, so thank you very much, Ing, for coming this morning. Lauren, will you go back to, I think it's slide 5.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ing.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, Lauren, actually, will you skip ahead 1 slide? Thank you. So following up on Ing's presentation, this is a slide we shared at the last meeting as well. These are our missions model and budgets for the amendment. We are using MFAC 17, as you heard Ing say, and for the budgets approved by EPA for 2008 ozone, 2015 ozone, and the 2020 SIP budgets. Next slide, please. This slide was also shared at the last meeting. Our baseline year for the amendment remains 2016. So we will be, for the analysis years and budgets, running 2023, 2026, 2029, 2032, 2040, and 2050. Next slide, please. This is a slide also that was shared at our last meeting. We will, for the amendment, be using the Series 14 Regional Growth Forecast. As Ing said, there were some slight corrections to the Series 14 Regional Growth Forecasts, specifically some corrections of anomalies discovered in traffic counts connected to employment centers, where the result in the 21 plan had been to have those employment links more dispersed, and they are in fact correctly now more concentrated around large employment centers. The overall numbers were unchanged. It's strictly the allocation. And I will pause there for a minute. Are there any questions on any of those? Okay, next slide, please. These are the new conformity criteria. They were mentioned in our last meeting, but to confirm, there are no project changes for the amendment. No capacity increasing projects are being added or modified. No exempt projects are being modified. The transportation control measure level of investment and commitment remains the same. The public involvement strategy for the amendment is drawn from the public involvement plan for the 2021 plan and the specific outreach and public information requirements that we have to meet. They're somewhat more limited for an amendment than they were for the plan, but they are consistent with the public involvement plan that was approved and utilized for the 2021 regional plan. And that public involvement strategy was attached to the materials and the revised agenda that was sent out for this meeting, should anyone want to review it. Or are there any questions about any of these? Okay, next slide, please, Lauren. So the final criteria that we have today are the revenue assumptions, which Ariana is going to present on. There was a handout that Ariana provided that was in your supporting materials, a Word document with redlining, just in case you would like to review that or follow along. And so thank you, Ariana, all you.
Yeah, thanks, Kirsten. So good morning, everybody. My name is Ariana Zerneden. I work in the Financial Planning, Budgets, and Grants Department. I'm the Financial Programming Manager here at SANDAG. And you may recall that in September, the SANDAG board directed staff to amend the 2021 regional plan to remove the road usage charge from the plan, as Kirsten mentioned. We are also required to make other updates based on new information, and the changes include the removal of the regional road usage charge. We're making changes to the future local revenue. There was a citizens initiative set for 2022 that did not qualify for the ballot, so we made updates to reflect that change. We're updating Transnet revenues to reflect an updated forecast that was approved by our board in April 2022, which replaces the July 2021 forecast previously used in the final regional plan. And then we have updates to state and federal leveraging ratios, and we're bringing all of this to you as part of the process and getting your feedback. The estimate still has sufficient revenue to fund the regional plan. So the removal of the road usage charge is going to be partly offset by other revenue increases. Although the overall revenues are reduced from 172.8 million to 165 million, the updated revenues still exceed the estimated cost of 163.5 million. There's a handout, as Kirsten mentioned, in your packet that includes a marked up version of the 2021 regional plan revenue assumptions compared to the revenue assumptions included with the final estimates approved by the board in December that you can also use to follow along with. If we can go to, no, let's stay there. So let me talk about the regional road usage charge. So as I mentioned, that's being removed. That accounts for 14.2 billion. And then in terms of future local revenues, the first half cent sales tax is moved from 2022 to 2024, again, due to that citizens initiative that didn't qualify. We have heard that the Citizens Initiative Measure Support Group does plan to seek petitions again in 2024. The future local revenues item is reduced by 1.896 billion due to this change. And then in terms of Transnet sales tax, the receipts were updated with the board approved quarterly forecast for April 2022. And this results in an increase of 1.914 billion over the duration of the plan. And then for state leveraging assumptions for the 2021 plan, we assume that between now and 2028, federal funds passing through the state would largely flow to the Los Angeles projects due to the 2028 Olympics. Historically, one Transnet dollar has brought in $2.41 in external revenues. And so that's the basis for changing the leverage ratio, since that's the historical leveraging ratio for the Transnet Major Corridor program. It is important to note that while the state budget is anticipated to be reduced, these state sources have statutory protections that may not have been in place in the past. Also, in addition, the Federal Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, or IJA, was not anticipated in the original plan. And because of IJA revenues flowing to the state, we now assume that 2.41 to 1 leveraging ratio between 2025 and 2030. So that's in the near term for the state road maintenance and rehabilitation account. And then from a 1-to-1 ratio from 2031 to 2050. So again, just in the short term. Federal leveraging assumptions. So we're using also the 2.41 to 1 leverage ratio for FTA discretionary funds from 2023 to 2030. And then we're moving down to a 2-to-1 ratio from 2031 to 2050. The revenue in the approved plan was developed prior to IJA being signed into law, and the law authorizes 1.2 trillion in infrastructure spending for transportation. So many of the SANDAG priority projects align with the criteria in IJA very well, and SANDAG is poised to do very well under these programs. So again, we're taking, these assumptions take significant new IJA revenue into account based on what will flow into FTA and FRA discretionary funds. And we've already seen evidence of this. For example, the largest infra grant nationally of 150 million for our Otay Mesa East project that came to us recently. And then in addition, the state recently awarded 300 million for the Los San realignment project without a match requirement. And then the board discussion during the meeting at which the road usage charge removal was directed included an assumption by the board that these IJA revenues would help fill the gap. And these amounts of revenue available through IJA are historically unprecedented, as you know, with new programs. The use of the leveraging ratio is really the best way to describe the impact, as we don't really have specific information on the size and details of individual new programs just yet. And if we can go to the next slide, just to provide an update, the approved plan has 9 billion of revenue in excess costs. So this allows for some contingency in the plan for uncertainty in terms of the timing and magnitude of available revenue to support projects. And the amendment reduces the contingency down to roughly 1.4 billion, but this is still enough to fulfill commitments in the approved plan. And with that, I'm happy to try to answer questions. All right. Thanks, Kirsten.
Let me unmute myself. Thank you very much. So next slide, please. And the slide after that. So that is the conclusion of the agenda item for the 21 regional plan amendment. I did want to mention that we expect to bring the conformity determination to this group in mid to late April. Our board has directed that the entirety of the amendment be completed by September. So that is the timeline. And more follow-up on that in next month. But that is the next item on this that we expect to bring to this group. So before we move on to agenda item 5, are there any other questions? Okay. Next slide, please, Lauren. So the 5th agenda item on our calendar today is the 2025 regional plan and opening conformity consultation for the 2025 regional plan with this group. This is the anticipated schedule for the 2025 regional plan. Model and concept development are already underway. And you can see here that we expect to be moving concepts to preferred scenario between the end of this year and next summer. And then we will have the draft plan and EIR and draft to final for the regional plan and EIR, with adoption expected in the fall of 2025. We have begun our outreach, and the public involvement plan for the 2025 regional plan is attached to the materials that were provided with the agenda. It is similar to the 2021 regional plan, but has been augmented to include greater grassroots engagement and greater implementation of sort of events and approaches in coordination with CBOs and other stakeholders to go into communities in the region and to get feedback and to have an opportunity for more of a dialogue in communities rather than centralized, or rather than merely providing information at presentations. So there is a far greater emphasis on grassroots engagement and a commitment to having the region-wide events be digital and recorded so that there can hopefully be greater participation from people who might otherwise not be able to come in person due to transportation or childcare or other conflicts or issues. Next slide, please. So for the 2025 regional plan, we will be using MFAC 17. We will be modeling, as we are for the amendment, for the budgets approved by EPA for 2008 ozone, 2015 ozone, and the 2020 SIP. Next slide, please. Our baseline year for the 2025 regional plan is 2022, and we will be modeling years 26, 29, 32, 40, and 50. I don't have anything else on the 2025 regional plan today. So if there are any questions on these, I'm happy to answer them. We do anticipate bringing you the growth forecast, which will be the Series 15 growth forecast this summer, and that should be the next 2025 regional plan item to come to this group. Any questions?
Hi, Kirsten. This is Maurice with Caltrans. I have a question on the use of the MFAC 2017. And I'm guessing we have somebody or somebody's from CARB on the line. I thought I had heard we had a newly approved version of MFAC, or we were maybe a couple of months away from that. Can somebody touch on that? Because I thought we were going to click over to whatever the latest year for approved MFAC, like 19 or 20 or 21.
There is, in fact, MFAC 21 was recently approved in December. I don't believe that Nesamani is with us today, but I think Kevin is here. I don't have the attendees list in front of me.
Hi, yes, I'm here.
But you are correct. There is a 20.
There is MFAC 2021 that has been recently approved for use by the federal government. Yes.
It does have a 2-year grace period, and we actually are. It's very uncommon that we will be doing an amendment, much less for our modeling team having to do all of the analysis for both an amendment and the 2020 and a regional plan at the same time. Both the 2025 regional plan and the 2021 amendment will be proceeding simultaneously this year, along with the development of ABM 3. And so the decision was made that MFAC 17 was much more of a known quantity, since we are so early in the grace period, that this would be a more reasonable way of meeting all of the deliverable targets and timelines that have been set by our board. Does that answer your question, Maurice?
Yes, in part.
Can I add something
Now-
here?
I just, go ahead, John, go ahead.
Yeah, this is John Kelly at EPA. I just thought I'd chime in and just say that, given the fact that MFAC 2017 was the model used with the 2020 SIP that I'm reviewing, everything I've seen so far looks good. I don't know what kind of complications that would introduce to have a newer model and try to assess conformity with budgets that are developed that were developed with a previous model. But I think that would be problematic, and it's as long as the amendment we're talking about and the plan that we're talking about are going to be coming out in within that grace period, which it sounds like. I don't know, Kristen, maybe you can verify that, but to me, I would not recommend going to the new model yet.
And we will be completing the model runs will be occurring during the grace period. So
Okay.
they are in process as far as developing those and refining the model now. So
is FHWA on the call?
I don't believe so, but
Yes, this is
Okay.
FHWA is on. Mhm.
Hi, Michael, good morning.
Hey, Maurice, good morning. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Doing well.
I was asking Michael because I think, one of the purposes of this group is to kind of talk through these types of issues. So, I'm not expecting any type of a formal answer, but maybe you can offer a couple of thoughts with respect to what Kirsten is describing as, the use of the MFAC 2017 to basically make it easier to get through their schedules that the board has outlined for staff versus clicking over to the later version of MFAC for their 2025 regional plan.
So I think that what John had summarized was pretty accurate. I know that, for example, as they had mentioned, it was my understanding that the 2021 MFAC had yet to be approved. And correct me if I'm other than stating that right, John, though I think that it's in the process to be approved soon. And then, as just mentioned, that there was a grace period. So I think, with SANDAG moving forward, using MFAC 2017 would be the way to go. And then once the 2021 was approved and or, moved past this grace period, that model could be considered, for future amendments and or future plan.
Yeah, I would only add that I believe that it has been approved for use, the new model, according to Kirsten, and that's I don't follow that very closely, but I'm sure you're right, Kirsten, right?
I don't have the exact date, but it was released in the Federal Register. It might even have been late November, around
Yes,
Thanksgiving holiday.
And I can jump in real quick here. Looking at my notes from the CFPG meeting, and it says effective as of November 15th, 2022. And
There you
then it said MFAC 2021 must be used for all regional conformity analysis starting after November 15th, 2024. So that's the grace period you're talking about.
Thank you for that. That's a big help.
You bet.
So Maurice, does that discussion, is there more that you would like to discuss on that? I don't want to.
No, Kristen, I just wanted to make sure that, we didn't sort of stumble when it comes to, the necessary conformity findings. And that's why I was asking if FHWA was on to hear from them in the person of Michael. But, being as, we've had this discussion, and again, that's one of the purposes of this group is to have these discussions. I'm okay with that as a decision. It sounds like, FHWA is okay because they're the, I guess, the sort of the final stamp from a regulatory standpoint on approval of the region's conformity findings. So, if they're good with it, it sounds like they are, then no, we wouldn't have any issues.
Okay. I just don't want to limit any other discussion. My apologies, Michael, for not knowing you were FHWA.
Let me just add, pardon me, one other wrinkle on this, just that I have a great deal of confidence in SANDAG, from the history I have with you. Every time that there has been an issue of one model taking over after another model, you have always been very upfront about everything. And at least in one instance, I remember you voluntarily decided to put multiple, you use like both models to do your analysis, because you weren't sure, given the timing, like what would happen with your board, and so you did it using both. I think that in this instance, it's just not called for because there's not that kind of a question mark, like what will be approved, what will happen in the future. It seems much more assured that we've got. Let me make one slight correction to what you said, Kirsten. You said the budgets were approved by EPA. We found them adequate. I'm working on an action that would propose to approve them. That's something that has to happen separately once we find budgets adequate. But right now, all the budgets that you've described have been found adequate. And so, going forward with the model that was used to produce those budgets, I think is it's just simply the right thing to do. And I don't see any reason why you'd want it, why any of us would want to introduce. And I thank you for the question, Maurice. But I just want to assure you that, like, when these kind of things have come up in the past, when there was a question about what would happen, there was a specific instance that I'm thinking about where SANDAG used multiple runs, with the old model, the current model, and like the about to be approved model. So I just want to give some assurance that I think everything right now is just completely above board and appropriate.
Thank you, and thank you for the clarification on adequate
Sure.
versus approved.
Sure.
I see that Rusty in the chat has put the link to the Federal Register, I believe, for anyone who wants to follow up on MFAC 21's approval on the grace period and its implementation. So are there, before I move to, this is our last agenda item. So before moving to the dates for the next meeting and an outline of what's to come, are there any other questions or topics for discussion? Okay, then next slide, please, Lauren. So the only remaining agenda item is the date of our next meeting. It's April 5th, 2023, 10:30 a.m. virtual as always. I put my email on the slide just in case you have, obviously everyone here has it in their email inbox, but if you have any comments on the website again, or any questions about the upcoming meeting, well, we're getting all of that in order, any functionality you'd like to see, any follow-up at all, please feel free to reach out to me. And unless there's anything else, we'll adjourn. So meeting adjourned. Thank you so much for attending.
Thank you, Kirsten.
Thank you.